Hey everybody, welcome back to Tommy's Tesla Tech and Travel. This is a comic book edition. So if you've been following these last few videos, you know that I've been out with some surgery recovering. I also found out now I'm a diabetic and a couple other things now. I just got home from the doctor today to get checked out. So there's been a lot going on and I've been kind of home a lot. So one of the things I decided to do with my downtime is actually catalog my entire comic book collection and price it out to variable comps, whether it's sold on eBay or through some of the pricing guides. And I've taken into account a large portion of my collection is actually signed by the creators, so it's really hard to find similar comps because the majority of my collection is not graded. That being said, I'm going through my last box right now, and I was like, you know what, I probably should have been documenting this the whole time, because I came across a few things, like books-wise that I forgot I had, or just some tips and tricks for storing your comic book collection, because not all of us have grandiose places to keep our collection. Mine is in the closet. Sounded weird. So right now I'm just going through the final box, because I have, I think it was 12 short boxes full of comics, and 2 of those short boxes is completely full of just independent comics. So like creators I guarantee you've never heard of unless you're really into the indie scene in local areas in Arizona or California or wherever. Because whenever I go to a new city or whatever, I always go by a comic book shop or two and I always ask, hey, do you have a local section? A majority of them don't, unfortunately. I'll give you a perfect example. We were in San Diego a number of years ago and I said, hey, do you have a local section? Like independent creators. Like, oh yeah, all the indie books are on the back wall. He pointed me to IDW, to Valiant. It's like, no, these are studios. I was talking about like some guy came in, some poor schlub and said, hey, will you sell my book? I mean, this was not planned. This just happened to be on the table because it's one of the boxes. Like me, I'm a comic book writer. Here's one of the graphic novels I wrote many, many years ago. It's like people like me that go in and say, hey, this is a book. Would you like to carry it? And it's up to me. I'm the distributor as well. So with that being said, let's go over some of my final pricings. I still have one more box to go, so these won't be complete, but also some do's and don'ts when storing your comic book collection. We all like to have our comics all facing forward. It's just a natural thing, so you can flip through and you can see them. Long term, that is a bad thing to do because all the books on this side are heavier than on this side. So when you start storing them, it's actually going to start to leave an imprint or actually damage the book in the long run. So for those of us in the know that have been collecting for a while in your short boxes, we like to stagger them. So when I take this next one, you'll notice it's the back of the previous book. So you're really kind of just going back and forth. So like here's number 1, 2 is backwards. Can you see? 2 is backwards, and we're going to put these board to board. Now these ones are going to be cover to cover, and so on and so forth until you have them all in the box safely. Am I the best at this? No. In fact, going through my boxes right now, I was like, ooh, a lot of these, like my Chew run, I have the entire run of Chew minus 1 variant, and I noticed that a couple of them had that indentation from being in the box too long, but luckily I have doubles. I tend to pick them up where I find them, so not a big deal. So a big tip I can give you if you're storing them in a short box or a long box and just regular bags and boards, stagger them. Don't just have them all in one direction. Next is make sure when they're in your boxes, there's not a lot of space. I'm going to give you an example. This box here is turned this way right now because it's only half full. This is a lot of my independent books or books that I might be getting rid of. Unfortunately, that box, when I found it, it was upright on the shelf. It wasn't sitting that way, so the books were actually all leaning back. And luckily, it was just these 2 books were and they are completely bent and destroyed. Luckily, I tried to look these up to price them. I couldn't even find them in any of my price guides, so apparently they didn't do so well. Ooh. Because yeah, a book like that you can probably save with a good pressing, but don't store them like that to begin with and save yourself a little bit of time. So you're probably asking yourself, what is the final total of your collection? Well, like I said, I still have one more box to go, so I don't have the final total yet. But right now, if I were to go and give a quote for insurance purposes, my total, well, I don't want to say it out loud because I think I'm going to sound like a jerk. Let me show you. That's before my last box, and that is before my run of Invincible. To be completely fair, I don't have Invincible 2, 3, 6 through 17, or 19, 20. So I'm missing some key issues. But most of my Invincible run is signed by the creators, and it has some original artwork to go with it too. So yeah, that's my collection. And what I did here too is I kind of broke down into categories for the collection. Let me find one to show you just for example. Okay, let's do this one. Kennel Block Blues. I picked this up because they did a signing and appearance at one of my local comic book shops here in Tucson a number of years ago. Really nice guy. So I picked up issues 1 through 2, and I put it on my pull list at that point. So right now it's issues 1 through 4. It is not graded. I would put it as a 9.8 because I'll be honest, the final 2 issues I never read, and the other ones were only out once when I read them, and when it was signed by Daniel Bayliss. And I would put it at approximately about $15 in value. Just because they're all signed, and they're pretty good books. Right here. But the only downside is, it is personalized to me. I didn't do that for all of them. Like, for example, this Greg Capullo one right here. It's signed by Greg Capullo. It's the Spawn 200 cover. I never read it or anything. I literally bought it just to have him sign it. And it was the Origin of the Omega Spawn, Greg Capullo ratio variant, 1 out of 10 variant. I put that as $15, and that's about the sold price that I have found for that book across the board with the signature. That's not graded. And the way I have them categorized, just by the box they happen to be in. So like, for instance, this first one that I did was a box of my single issues that are not graded, but they are pretty rare or pretty expensive books in the long run. For example, Defenders #1. Is it graded? No. And it's about a 4.0 if you look at it and break it down. And I have it signed by Steve Englehart. And the closest comps I could find between $120 and $160. So I went with the low end at $125. And I put notes for myself. Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #7, second print. I know second prints aren't usually worth a whole lot, but this one's a grade 6. It's probably higher, but I'm kind of downgrading it a little bit. And that one I would ask $75 for because it's the first Krang cover, and I put that in quotes because it's actually just the species that Krang comes from, but it would be later known as Krang. And right here, my values are based on eBay Ask and sold comps. And I think that's a fair way to assess the values. Some books, like I'll use an example in the trading card world. I just bought a Magic Johnson card recently from a card shop that I was at, and they were asking $30, which I looked it up. That price was on the high end, and I was going to try and negotiate, but by the time I got to the counter, he actually looked it up on eBay and found the sold comps were about $15, and that's what he charged me because the prices did change. So there's some wiggle room with the pricing on my comics, but the reality is this is what I would ask for them in order to part with those specific books. Perfect example, I have a Batman #1 from the New 52 that's signed by Snyder, Greg Capullo, and Jonathan Galipian. If I'm saying that right, I hope I am. I'm always paranoid I'm not. Like, for me to get rid of that book, I'd probably ask $400 because it's a high grade. It was a sought-after book at one point. It was definitely a wall book, and it's signed by all 3 of the major contributors. So to me, that's a pretty valuable book. Now, when I'd be saying that I would take less for it, maybe under the right circumstances, but your comic book collection is completely up to you to value how you want. There's fair market value, then there's what you're willing to take. And I really thought I would just make this video in order to share my experience cataloging my entire collection. Because I love comics, and do I ever plan on selling them? No, but for instance, I have several runs of comics that I enjoyed reading them when they came out. But some of them, for example, Saga. I bought Saga day 1, first came off the shelf. It was recommended to me by one of my comic book guys, and I really enjoyed the book, and I have no regrets buying the entire run as it came out. But the fact is, I stopped reading it after issue, I think, 12 or 13, but I had that completist mentality where I completed the whole run. So would I be willing to get rid of that run? Sure. And I've tried before, but I'll give you, again, I'm the king of examples. A friend of mine tried to sell it, and someone said, we were asking $500 for the entire run because that's when it was at its height. Guy was like, hey, I'll give you $400 just for issue 1. I was like, nah, I don't want to deal with the nickel and diming of the rest of the issues, all or nothing. And he passed, which I get because there would have been a lot to ship, but I just didn't want to have to deal with the hassle of getting rid of one book and then having another 60-some books there not doing anything. So some of the runs I have that I probably would consider getting rid of is I have Paper Girls 1 through 30, Saga 1 through almost present. I think I'm missing the newest issues that just came out. What else do we got in there? I have a pretty good run on Spawn, like early issues. Books like that. And Walking Dead, I have issues 88 through the end. Again, like with my collection, because I was lucky enough to meet most of these creators, a lot of it's signed, but not verified. It's just, sorry, you gotta take my word for it, but I was one who got them signed. I was there in person. I think I have pictures with some of them, but still, nonetheless, it's all up to you as, the seller to have that relationship with the buyer so they know they can trust you, which I would like to think people can trust me in that regard. But yeah, that's it. I decided to price out my comic book collection, and there's another caveat to go with it. I have some books that are out for grading right now that aren't here, and you probably saw that, and hopefully they'll be back in the next couple weeks, which is Incredible Hulk 180, 181, 182, Secret Wars number 8, Amazing Spider-Man number 252, and New Mutants 98. The cool thing about doing this, and the reason I decided to make this short-ish video, is I've kind of just been into like the big key issues lately, like for, I guess, investment purposes, but slash like I'm in a place where I can get those books and that makes me happy. I miss the thrill of the hunt with some of the like just regular issues. Like today, I had 2 doctor's appointments today, and between them I went and killed some time and looked at one of our local secondhand stores here in Tucson, in southern Arizona, called Bookman's. And I found a couple issues of Spawn that I needed for my run, and I found X-Force 5, 6, and 7. And I was like, you know what? I have X-Force 1 and 2. Everybody has X-Force 1, but I also have X-Force 2, which is the second appearance of Deadpool. Why don't I try to complete the first like 10 issues, which X-Force is not going to be that hard. X-Factor, the same thing. I missed the thrill of the hunt. And I've been to a couple comic book shows recently, including T-Cat, which that video should have been up before this, and that kind of got me back in. Like, I love the smaller shows. Don't get me wrong, I love the bigger Comic Cons, and we actually were talking about today. I think we're going to try and do San Diego this year. That's a whole other story and a whole other video for another day, because I don't think we're going to renew our annual passes for Disney. So we were like, oh, so that opens us up to more traveling scenarios and possibilities. And I just applied for my passport finally, and I have Dana's information over here to do her passport as well. So there might be some fun travels in the distant future. Well, not so distant future. Because right now, let's just worry about the present, which is getting healthy, getting back on track, getting back to work. Because as you saw, I just priced out hundreds and hundreds, if not a couple thousand books, because I had nothing else to do, really. One that kind of stinks is like moving the boxes around. I'm not really supposed to be lifting them. So it's just been like a small stack of books at a time. But hey guys, thanks for watching. I know this wasn't the funnest video, but I thought it'd be informative. So how to store your comics. Oh yeah, so let's break that down. Let's do a quick recap. 1, try to stagger them back and forth, front to front, back to back, so that way they're not going to create spine creases and everything else in your short boxes. Number 2, make sure the box is full or not leaning where the books are leaning, because you don't want to get that. Not fun. Another couple things we can talk about was don't keep them in direct light. Keep them in a nice dark place. Like I said, they're in our closet, and I have them off the ground and on shelves, all the short boxes. I did make little videos on here where I change out the slabs I have on display, because you really don't want to leave them out and exposed to the elements, because just because they're graded and slabbed now doesn't mean that they're not going to deteriorate from like UV light and things like that. I was just talking with a friend, and he was like, oh yeah, I had some books priced, and he told me they took off the pricing label on them, and because they had been in direct light for so long, there was actually a noticeable mark under where the sticker was for pricing on the book. So that's not good. So I like to rotate them out because I do like to look at them. Why buy them and not look at them? But I also try to stagger them around so there's not just wear and tear on these very, very valuable books. So what do you guys think? I would like to hear some of the books you have in your collection. Please comment down below. Could tell me what your favorite book in your collection is, or like I showed you, like these books were bent. What's a big oopsie you had? I mean, you guys all saw mine back at WonderCon this last year, and I'll link that video down below where I dropped one of the most expensive books I ever bought. I actually bought it because I dropped it. All right, guys, thanks for taking a ride with us. Let's take another ride again soon. And I don't know, I'm tired. It's like 11:45. It's bedtime. Good night, all.